I would like to welcome you all today to the Manatee Tiger Bay Luncheon. My name is Xavier Bailey, and I am the president. We will have the Pledge of Allegiance by Sarasota Military Academy Cadet, Cadet Major Bonilla Martinez.
Please place your hand over your heart in honor of our nation. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please give her a round of applause. I love to see the youth come out. Love what Sarasota Military Academy is doing, bringing their youth out, training them for the future. Do we have any veterans or active duty members in the audience? We would like to recognize you. Any veterans, active duty members, any veterans, please stand, please stand. Thank you so much for your service. We have Councilman Bill Sanders with us today, one of our dignitaries. Would you please stand and be recognized? So just know, you all, you know I like to be on time, so I will be getting through this program with my 6 panelists today. So, yeah, I know. Please silence your cell phones, please. If you did it, please check again. Topic, immigration, ready or not. We will have Adriana Guzman Ruzel, Esquire. She's an immigration attorney. Lee Carter, E-Verify advocate, Floridians for E-Verify Now. Dennis Maley, editor, The Bradenton Times. Johnny Chris, Suncoast on Point podcast, strlmedia.com. Dr. Keith Fitzgerald, former Democratic member of the Florida House of Representatives. And Kevin Wright, retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army. The bios are listed online. If you want to read, if you have not read up on those. And our first speaker will be Adriana Guzman Roselle. Please welcome her to the panel.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Adriana Guzman Rosell. I am an immigration attorney. I have been an immigration attorney for about 16 years. As you can tell from my accent, I am not originally from here. I am Colombian. I came to the United States about 27 years ago after I married my husband. And I was an attorney in my country. Later on, I became an attorney in the United States, and I am very proud to be a United States citizen. I can tell you I love my country, as I love this country as much as I love my own. Any single time I travel abroad, I consider this is definitely my country. Life put me in the situation of representing clients before all the authorities and courts and immigration courts around the country, and I love what I do. I can see the two sides of the coin. I know this is a very difficult issue to be sorted out, a lot of need for those who are coming in a legal way, and also a lot of concerns for those who have been living in the United States safety and fear for their safety. I believe it's important for us to have an immigration reform, but I also believe that there haven't been a political intention from either one of the sides to accomplish this. It is important to take into consideration that these illegal immigrants have been in the United States, many of them for many years, and many of them have grew roots in this society. So when we see their faces in the way I have seen their faces, not in the way the media put their faces, you see there are people that have the intention to work hard, to leave behind extreme situations of poverty and misery. You also see people with dreams, that they want to achieve also the American dream. It is not easy, because the avenues in order for them to come to the United States are not easy either. Usually you have to have relatives, or you have to have some sort of support in order for you to come to the United States legally. Having said that, I do understand your concerns, but I also understand that people that have been here over the years, many years, deserve the opportunity to share the American dream. It's important to mention there are a lot of complaints that I hear in my office daily basis. People say, oh no, the illegal immigrants come and they are taking money out of the government for different reasons. For example, health, for example, welfare in the sense of food stamps, etc. Well, not everybody qualifies for those benefits. You have to be actually a lawful permanent resident of a US citizen in order for you to apply for food stamps. That is one of the things. Another thing that is important to take into consideration is how these people have to file income taxes by law. Many of them don't have the knowledge that they can do it, but they do. And that is one of the things I encourage in my office strongly my clients, and tell them, okay, have you done your taxes? It's very important. If you are an employer, that you have your people, and you suspect that these guys, the documents they provide you in order for them to work in your company are not really the best. You have the doubt that this person could be illegally. It's important for those guys to see an immigration attorney, to see what possibilities they have. They may become legal in the United States, and they don't know that they have the chance. Every single case is individual. So we will have to study each of their cases. But also, a strong recommendation is to let them know that they can obtain what is called an IT number in order for them to be able to file their income taxes. They are not going to be able to get back money for the taxes that they are claiming. However, eventually, if they become legal in the United States, then they can do the claim. Those are the things that I consider very important. They have to contribute to society, and I can understand the point of view of many. Obviously, they have to merge into the society, and they have to display their behavior that we are expecting for them to display. But many of them definitely I believe, deserve to be here. Many of them have grown roots for a long time and deserve to be in the United States. I understand there are others that have committed crimes, and Mr. Trump has been extremely strong regarding that part. And I believe is right. I mean, if you are coming from another place and you are coming here and you commit a crime, well, you have to be punished for that. There is no justification for that. But there are also others that have been here and they have behaved and complied with the laws. Am I on time still?
You are good. You got 5 seconds.
I have 5 seconds. Oh, that is good. Thank you so much.
Oh, be quiet. Please give her another round of applause. Thank you so much. Next, we will have Lee Carter, E-Verify Advocate, Floridians for E-Verify Now. Please give him a round of applause as he comes to the podium.
Hi, good afternoon. Okay, with only 5 minutes to communicate a meaningful and memorable message on the most important issue facing our times, immigration, I bring you impactful words of people you know. Person number one. All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens of legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers. That's why I have moved aggressively to secure our borders more by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens, by cracking down on illegal hiring, and by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. We will do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes and to better identify illegal aliens in the workplace. We are a nation of laws, and it's wrong and ultimately self-defeating to permit the kind of abuse of our immigration laws we've seen in recent years, and we must do more to stop it. Person number 2. We all agree on the need to better secure the border and to punish employers who choose to hire illegal immigrants. We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law. We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently and lawfully to become immigrants in this country. Quote number 3. America in 2019 is markedly a different place than it was in the 60s. There is not a common ground existing. The fear is that people ultimately have different core values. We are in many ways a different country because demographically, the country began changing with the passage of the Immigration Reform Act of 1965. From that time forward, we began changing drastically and continually. I bridge to the last quote by noting that past immigration reform has indeed changed the demographic makeup of America through the importation of unskilled, poor, third world immigrants that now form a major voting bloc in our nation, as recognized and predicted in this quote. The 1965 Immigration Reform Act, promoted by President Kennedy, drafted by Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and pushed through the Senate by Ted Kennedy, has resulted in a wave of immigration from the third world that should shift the nation in a more liberal direction within a generation. It will go down as the Kennedy family's greatest gift to the Democratic Party. So let's review the 4 people. First quote was President Bill Clinton, the 1995 State of the Union Address. The second quote was Senator Barack Obama, 2005. The third quote was ex-CBS anchor Dan Rather from an NPR interview just 2 weeks ago. And the last quote was Democratic consultant Patrick Reddy from an article of his called Immigration, the Real Kennedy Legacy. Fierce individualism, self-reliance, and a love of liberty were American core values that triggered a revolution for independence and prompted a civil war to establish for a second time the self-evident truth that all men are created equal. Migrants prior to the 1965 Act assimilated to those American values. Post-1965 reform immigrants do not. In 2015, Donald Trump read a book. Believe it or not, he read it, he ran on it, and he won on it. Few people know this, because Trump, he does not share credit with anyone. Those 4 persons I quoted, they're all Democrats, and yet their words could have been written in this conservative book that Trump read. My point is that Democrats used to support reasonable immigration policy. Those days are gone. Democrats also knew that their future lay in the transformation of the country through changes in immigration laws. They were very right about that. This book that Trump read, in my opinion, a must-read for all Americans, is as insightful as it is infuriating. Insightful because it presents the immigration story we have not heard. It's infuriating because we have not been told the truth by the media or the government about the negative impact of runaway and rampant mass immigration in our country. In fact, the media, along with the most powerful forces in our culture, are all on the same page. Along with the Democrats, the rich, Washington lobbyists, Republican consultants, even stalwarts on other conservative issues like the Wall Street Journal are with the left when it comes to mass immigration from the third world. When it comes to societies rich and powerful, immigration is the great unifier. It seems the only ones opposed to fundamentally transforming our country into some other country are the American people. The book is Adios America, and if you care about this country, you need to read that book. then please call, write, email, or tweet Governor Ron DeSantis and tell him you want him to follow through on his promise to implement E-Verify in Florida. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carter, for your presentation. Next, we will have Dennis Maley, editor for the Bradenton Times. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you all for being here today. This is an issue that I've covered for a long time in my 10 years with the paper, and it's one, like so many, in which you'll find a broad consensus among the American people in terms of what is wrong and what they want, but like so many, is also politically paralyzed by the fringes of both parties who, as Adriana suggested, really don't or haven't demonstrated a genuine will to solve the problem legislatively. You have an immigration system in which legal immigration is not designed and operating in a way that is compatible with the demands both of people wanting to immigrate legally and of employers wanting to hire people, whether it's cheap labor, skilled labor, what have you. Until we have meaningful reform of that program, you're going to continue to have illegal immigration, although it's currently at an all-time low, and there's been more undocumented immigrants crossing back over the border in the last 2 years than there has been coming in. If we want to talk about, and to be honest with you, I'm a very centrist, data-driven person personally. I like to look at things from a factual perspective and try to draw meaningful conclusions and design the kind of solutions that will actually address those numbers. And if you take, for example, the border wall, and anyone who supports it that thinks it's a good investment to solve any kind of actual problem, it's not supported by any of the evidence and data. If you look at the Border Patrol's own numbers, you have people trying to enter with criminal backgrounds. 43% were apprehended at the Canadian border. Another 42% were apprehended at airports or other non-border ports. 15% were at the southern border. The vast majority of undocumented immigration comes from people overstaying a visa. They get a travel visa, an education visa, what have you. They get a job when they're here and they don't go back. So if you think that supporting a very expensive wall is going to put a meaningful dent in that number, it's just not supported by any factual evidence. So that's one of the things that we have to look at and say, what are we actually investing in with our tax dollars if we're going to call that a solution? And if it's not a solution that's driven by data, then what is it other than sending a signal and a message? And I don't think it's a positive one. The story of America has always been, everybody in this room likely has some tie to this, but it's always been people immigrating to this country as generally cheap, unskilled labor, doing the lowest totem pole jobs and working up and building through the system and then being replaced by other immigrants. I don't know how many of you guys have ever been up on a roof in Florida in the summer, all right? I have. It is blisteringly brutal work. Yet there is not a high demand for existing unemployed Americans to do some of these very difficult occupations. But there are people from all over the world who would cut off one of their fingers for an opportunity to come here and do that. And that's always been the case. My ancestors came from Ireland to work in the coal mines of Pennsylvania, where nobody wanted to work. Nobody wanted to go down into the mine and get black lung and have that kind of life for very little pay, except for people that were escaping a great famine and said, we can eat if we do that, no problem. We can feed our kids if we do that, no problem. So that's been a historical part of this country. Now, conversely, one thing that I will say has coincided, or two things actually, that have coincided with the maybe the cultural or societal debate here is a move away from assimilation, which I think has probably been negative, in which it used to be sought after for people to assimilate and become American, and the preservation of heritage may have been a change that has made this more difficult. But then the other part has just been the changing landscape. And that has never, when demographics shift powerfully, which they are right now, if you just look at birth rates, if you just look at what the projections are, that's always been somewhat uncomfortable. And we have to address that because it's never gone smoothly in nations that have experienced that. But when you look at what immigrants actually bring to the economy, it's generally very positive. You're talking about people at the lowest income wages. They typically spend about 105% of their wages. They typically go into debt, and they spend hyper locally. So in most economies, even when they're dominated by, their low-skilled jobs are dominated by undocumented workers, the economic effect tends to be positive for the community. And if we want to talk about people taking away jobs that would go to other Americans, we should probably look at the prison labor and the way that's exploited by so many for-profit countries. And we have people in prison working kind of a neo-slavery in which they're working for sometimes 30 cents an hour and subsidizing the profits of companies like Lowe's, Walmart's, McDonald's. That's perhaps a job that would, a more skilled job that would go to an American. Immigrants are twice as likely to start a small business than naturally born citizens are. They're half as likely to commit a crime. So I think that if we want to have fact and data-driven discussions about it, we have to start with the actual data, and then we have to look and say, how do we meaningfully reform this system in a way that respects the law of the land, but also has the practicality in which it would be feasible to address immigration on the whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Maley. Next, we will have Johnny Chris, Suncoast On Point podcast, strlmedia.com. Please give him a round of applause.
Bear with me just a second. I appreciate that. As everybody can clearly see, I'm the odd one out, right? But question, show of hands, how many of you believe that you have a good heart? I know I do. All right. We all want to help out our fellow brethren. We get it. All right. The man said it best. 3 other people before me have said it. This is a nation built on immigration. But it's also a nation of laws. So we have to decide, are we going to follow all the laws, or are we going to follow the laws we want to? You see, now, although Mr. Maley brings up a very good point, here are some things of research from the Immigration Center. Because I wanted to know just how true is it? Are illegal immigrants, taking jobs away from us? Quite possibly. However, according to the Center for Immigration Studies, there is no occupation in the United States in which the majority of workers are illegal immigrants. So, but that almost seems to kind of contradict what I just said, doesn't it? Here's the whole point. Every time an illegal immigrant enters into this country, somebody who busted their butt, somebody who did things the right way, somebody who's coming from another country, who sat in line, filled out the paperwork, did everything that needed to be done, is being robbed of that opportunity. That is fact. Although it may not seem directly at that time, but think about it. Now, you can bring up whatever you want. You can blame the man in the office. You can blame the person who was before. You can blame the fact that they're all doing nasty things like separating children from families, which is horrible. We can all agree on that. But if I get pulled over for a DUI and my daughter's in the car, guess who's getting arrested? And guess whose daughter gets taken? Those are the facts. So, if people want to come into this country, absolutely. Why not? This is the land of opportunity after all, isn't it? But then we need to make sure that everybody's doing it the right way, because I can't go to Canada without my visa. I can't go across the seas. I can't go anywhere unless I do my due diligence. and I have the proper paperwork. So why are we slowly yet surely turning into a nation of selective law? Why does it matter to some and not others? I believe that I'm no better, no worse than any other person in this room. And I'd like to think that you all feel the same way about me. So is it really too much to ask to have people come in the right way? And let me part by asking this question. If everybody thinks everybody should be doing leeway, ask yourself this. What are you doing to help this illegal immigrant become a legal immigrant? Or are you just sitting there looking for somebody to blame? Because it's a whole lot easier to point at the TV or the man in the White House or the man who came before and so on and so forth than it is to stand up and do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Next, we will have Dr. Keith Fitzgerald, former Democratic member of the Florida House of Representatives. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you, everybody. You didn't have to use doctor. I'd never introduced myself as doctor. I have a lot of titles that I've accumulated over the years. To me, the most important one is colonel. I am a colonel in the Kentucky militia. It's the same exact status that Colonel Sanders had. I've got a nice plaque from the governor of Kentucky telling me that I'm a Kentucky colonel, so henceforth I want to be referred to as colonel.
Absolutely.
Work for Colonel Sanders, it should work for me. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from on this issue, because it's sort of a funny issue. As some of you know, I've been a political figure. I've been actively involved in politics. But in my prior life, in my regular life, I'm a college professor, and I have a PhD in political science, and I wrote a dissertation in 1986 about immigration policy, a policy I chose in 1986, partly because I thought it was hugely consequential, but it wasn't really very controversial. Things have changed a little bit since then. And because I approach this thing from a standpoint of a scholar, it's an incredibly frustrating thing for me to talk about in public. Because the nonsense that is spewed out on this topic is so vast, it's unbelievable. And I can't really spend time just sort of going back over some of the misconceptions that have been laid out here by people, all of good faith, I'm sure. But I would like to separate off for a second the substance from the symbol. And I want to begin by talking about the symbolism of immigration policy, because what immigration policy is about is the national identity. It's about who we imagine ourselves to be, who do we take ourselves to be. What are we really all about? Is there a uniting idea behind the United States? Or are we simply an assemblage of people who are going in many, many different directions without a sense of commonality? So I would like to go back to that 1965 Immigration Reform Act that President Kennedy started and his Attorney General pushed through, and the chief sponsor of the bill was Ted Kennedy. By the way, he wasn't really the guy who pushed it through. He just showed up in the Senate, and they wanted to give him a little gift, so he looked like he was an important person, so he handed him the immigration bill. But let me tell you what that was about. The United States, before World War II, turned away Jewish refugees from the Nazis. And it was a matter of great shame. After the war, we would not take refugees from the internment camps and the death camps for some time. This caused huge problems in our foreign policy. The State Department was telling people over and over again, we have to fix our racist immigration policies. And they were racist. They banned Asians as a matter of class, for example. That's a racist policy. We have to do this because the United States is supposed to be the avatar of freedom. We're supposed to be the avatar of democracy. We are supposed to treat each individual on the basis of their character, not on the basis of some ascriptive status. We want to see what people can do and what they can contribute. And that inconsistency with what we did and what these high values were helping the communists. We were standing opposed to them, a country of values. And so we said, you know what? We cannot restrict Asians from this country on the basis of their race. That is a betrayal of our values. And we fixed that. And you know what? As a consequence, we do have a culturally diverse culture that includes many, many, many millions of Asians who do great things for this country. So what really is at stake here is our faith in ourselves, our faith in what has made us a great country, our ability to put a political system based on liberty, rights, and freedoms over and above race, ethnicity, even religion. And it's worked. It's been brilliant. And so what I would like you to think about today is, why have we lost this faith? It's not the immigrants. You know, the most patriotic people I know are people who came, or DACA kids, who've come here and fought for their citizenship to make the contribution they want to make. The unsanctioned immigrants who make up large numbers of our armed services, patriots who only ask to be considered for an adjustment of their status. And by the way, by definition, we're talking about people who did nothing wrong. So the last thing I want to address is this question of the rule of law. We absolutely need comprehensive immigration reform. There's no doubt about it. And you refer to this neither party is doing enough. Remember that the Senate passed a comprehensive immigration reform bill just 3 years ago. So it's really not like most people are on a totally different page. We know what needs to be done. But let's address this rule of law. It is wrong for a person to come into this country against the law, and we have to do what we can to fix that problem and bring that to an end. Absolutely. No president prior to Barack Obama had ever deported more people for being here illegally. We have to enforce those laws. But the United States, when it responded to its own failure back in World War II and afterwards, to respond to that humanitarian gesture, spent the next 25 and 30 years building asylum laws in the United States. Not only in the United States, but we convinced the rest of the countries of the world to adopt asylum laws. And right now, we have people who are coming across this border legally seeking asylum, and we are turning them away. And we're violating their human rights. If we're so concerned about the law, we should follow that law. Because this country is about more than just ethnicity and race. It's about a higher principle. And that's why I want to challenge you to think about this issue at a deeper level. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Next, we'll have Kevin Wright, retired Lieutenant Colonel for the United States Army. Please welcome him. Thank you.
Thank you, Manatee Tiger Bay Club and Madam President, for inviting me to listen, learn, and speak today. I'll start with what I believe to be truths, which are germane but larger than a discussion on immigration. Then I'm going to offer what I believe are underlying roots of how our nation landed in the swamp of failed immigration policy. And I'll end by coming back to the truth as the basis for what must be done to drain the swamp. Truth number one, the nation state is not dead. The nation state has been the principal driver of world politics for 500 years or more. ISIS, the Taliban, Hezbollah, Syria, Venezuela, North Korea, Cuba, and the United Nations are tools of nation states more powerful than they are. Any notion that international law or international will has precedence over the nation states that wield power is a fictional illusion. Nation states are sovereign entities and have an obligation to protect their interests. In some nations, this means protecting the interests of a few, an oligarchy, a theocracy, or a Politburo. For the United States, that means protecting and preserving government of, by, and for the people. That is why for our country, citizenship has intrinsic value beyond perhaps any other nation that has ever existed. I'm an American. What makes one an American? I was socialized and assimilated to believe in those fundamental precepts which define Americans. I'm a citizen because I was born of American citizen parents on American soil. That's not the only legal pathway to citizenship, but it was mine. A citizen observed in a letter to Ronald Reagan, only in our country can you have any origin whatsoever and become known as an American. Becoming a citizen is a matter of law. Becoming an American is a matter of choice. We are a nation of immigrants, but one which has survived for 2.5 centuries by assimilating those that make it their home. This was true prior to our birth as a nation. We survived both because of and despite our diversity of peoples. Diversity is a value-neutral concept, a source of both challenge and opportunity. It is neither inherently good nor bad. We do not want to become a collection of peoples bound by nothing except the label citizen. We should remain the world's melting pot, not a salad bowl. Without memory, without the stories by which our memories are carried forward, we cannot say who or what we are. An honest observer recognizes that both major political parties share blame in the creation and sustainment of our failed immigration policy. Republicans turn a blind eye to illegal immigration out of deference to moneyed corporate interests who seek cheap labor as a means to increase profits. The left has long pandered to minority ethnic groups solely to gain political leverage. Voters have been swayed to participate and to vote based on the false premise that they represent the party of compassion. Begging the question, compassion for whom? Compassion for what? The most guilty party in the swamp, that is immigration reform or lack thereof, lies with the body responsible for making laws, the United States Congress. Congress has long forfeited its constitutional duty to make laws and fund their enforcement. It's easy to escape accountability when you're only one among 535 persons. The Constitution includes only one reference to immigration, where it empowers Congress to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. In 1790, James Madison, on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, said, "It is no doubt very desirable that we should hold out as many inducements as possible for the worthy part of mankind to come and settle amongst us. But why is this desirable? Not merely to swell the catalogs of people. No, sir. It is to increase the wealth and strength of the community." Sounds like the father of our Constitution was arguing for merit-based immigration. Congressional leadership, which exercise virtual autocratic rule of the respective houses, have either blocked or failed to consider immigration reform. Republican leadership is seen as a debate not worth the political cost and a distraction from establishing less difficult victories on which to hang a banner on the party's staff. Immigration has become intrinsically bound up with issues of identity, prone to the politics of tribalism. We have a judiciary and legislature which has not hesitated for decades to expand the powers of the national government through broad interpretation of the supremacy and commerce clauses of the United States Constitution, but today they allow local and state governments to not cooperate with and to thwart the efforts of the feds to enforce immigration law. Our failed immigration policy has tangible and significant costs. Both Johnny and Carter have spoke to that, so I'm going to skip over some of those costs and go right to what must be done. We must end the practice of providing sanctuary. The left has waged an ongoing assault on secure communities program and deportation more generally. We must enforce current immigration laws. The lesson from the last 30 years of immigration policy is that lawlessness breeds more lawlessness. The national dialogue and debate start point ought to be recognition that illegal immigrants are committing a crime, period. Secure the border to include all ports of entry, not those on the just on the southern border, but on aerial ports of entry as well. Drug, illegal weapons, trafficking across the border is a security threat. Less than a decade ago, border security was not a partisan issue. We must implement merit-based immigration, but it should not take 10 to 15 years to complete that process. The Departments of State and Homeland Security need to be resourced and made to do far better. We need to reinstitute quotas. Merit-based immigration need not be based implicitly on nationality, but rather a genuine measure of an applicant's added value. We must monitor and track those on visa permits or temporary residents in the United States. We must fix the asylum process. We must end birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship has outlived its original intent. The Supreme Court of the United States has never issued definitive interpretation and likely needs to. We need to start by making English our official language to encourage assimilation. This cannot be done immediately. That's unreasonable. The lack of social capital of legal aliens means that our children and grandchildren get sucked into an underclass culture. In closing, doing the right thing is not complex. It may be difficult, but it's not complex. This speaks truth. Immigration reform is politically difficult. We need to quit excusing failure to do the right thing by framing lack of political will as complexity. Thank you.
Okay. So now it's time for questions and answers for my members only, please. To ask a question, you must be a member of the Manatee Tiger Bay Club. To become a member, you can see Lane at the registration desk. Give us your name, if you're a member, and the state of your question and which speaker it is for. Please, please try not to elaborate too much. What'd you say, Patty? Please just let us know who the question is for. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Jim Whitman, and I'm a member of the Manatee Tiger Bay Club and also a previous Tiger by the Tail awardee. I don't think I'm going to get one today, though. I have a question for the two colonels. Very simple question. Do you really think that shouting at people is likely to change their minds? Thank you.
Do you want to answer that?
The answer is no.
My name is Lawrence Miller, and
I wasn't yelling at anyone, sir. You were shouting.
okay. Can I ask my question?
Please.
My name is Lawrence Miller,
Hey, Lawrence.
and I'm a member of Tiger Bay. I just wanted to ask, basically it's a two-pronged question in that at the base of the Statue of Liberty, it reads a poem that talks about people coming here, yearning to be free, that we all know are we still that nation, number one, and number two, as far as ending birthright citizenship, what are we going to replace it with? I mean, I'm trying to figure out just where that is coming from. But certainly, I would like to know, is anyone in the panel can answer the question in terms of, are we still that nation that believes in that poem sitting at the base of the Statue of Liberty? Personally, I do.
Well, I would like to make just a historical,
Just come to the podium.
just a historical comment. We weren't that nation then.
No, I understand that. I'm
Yeah.
not talking about the historical aspect of it.
Right,
I'm
okay.
talking about the spirit of
Yes.
that poem.
That's a different
Are
question.
we still that nation?
That poem was offered up, and it was sponsored to put on the base of the Statue of Liberty precisely because that was immediately before we passed the 1924 Immigration Act, which was the most exclusive act and the most racially exclusive act we ever had. So the poem was put there as a form of protest against that. So the way that I think about our country is a country that's always struggling over what its identity is. Is it universal, general, or is it about race, ethnicity, or whatever? And so I see this as a struggle, and it's important for us to get it right because it has to do with the whole sense of what this project is about.
I definitely think we are still that country. If you don't believe it, look at the people we encounter every day. Look at the people who you yourself encounter on a daily basis. Have you guys ever just walked up to somebody and said, "Hey, I'm Johnny, nice to meet you"? Only you put in your name, obviously. That shows compassion. That shows that we're willing to have, one, civil discourse, and two, I don't have to agree with what any of you all say. You all don't have to agree with me. But it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's about respect. And perhaps if we start with commonality, we're able to grow upon that and get back to everybody's definition of what it is. Because everybody here can understand, giving you're hungry, you're sick, you're tired, your huddle masses. We've all been there, therefore guidance, because they're coming to us. So we can at least show them the proper way to do it, to where nobody gripes.
Just real quick, and again, I would say, look at the book. Adios America also has something to say about both of those. The poem is great poetry. It's not good policy. It's great sentiment, though. On the Birthright Citizenship, I venture to guess, a few of us know that comes from what we now accept from a footnote from a Supreme Court Justice, William Brennan, where he mentioned it in a footnote, and it seems like it's been off to the races ever since. The original intent was for the children and those who were freed slaves at that time, not to be given away as free candy to anybody who crosses the border, however they do it. We have birthright tourism now, and so many people are getting that as just gumball citizenship. I think that's a shame, but it does need to be ruled upon, but it comes from a footnote in a 1982 Justice William Brennan decision. Very trivial. So.
Yeah, birthright citizenship is the outgrowth of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. What I was arguing is that I don't know the answer to that. The correct way to do that is to have a constitutional amendment, but there's no appetite for that. So instead, what we'll have to do is we need the Supreme Court to finally, and I know Dr. Fitzgerald, you wrote about this on Facebook, I read it. The Supreme Court needs to finally come up and interpret, no bones broken about exactly what is meant by that and apply it to the modern era. The poem that was at on the Statue of Liberty, that was intended to bring about the opening of Ellis Island in about 1891. The Statue of Liberty was to celebrate our Declaration of Independence in 1776, a gift from the French. And so that poem was a good thing. But in the year before the Ellis Island was opened, we actually had a law that was passed in 1892 that barred immigration of those convicted of certain crimes and the sick and the diseased. So even back then, we have historical precedent in the wake of opening up Ellis Island in that poem, welcoming others into Ellis Island to be processed for immigration.
Patty?
Pat Benson, member, and I've received 2 Tiger by the Tails too, and I'd like to thank Keith for being such a dynamic speaker. I don't believe in illegal immigration, but I do believe in what's being done at the border with the asylum and putting our children in cages. How dare this country do such a thing and separate families? This is for all of you. How can you justify a president, by the way, I'm dynamic, justify a president who does these things to children? I'd like to see his children locked up. Answer? And
Are you done asking your question, Patty?
I have so many questions.
Well, you have one question.
I know,
Let me
honey.
address that part, and I think there's an important thing that's been missed here that none of us brought up, and I think we'd all have something to say about it. Our retraction as a world power, which there has been an appetite for on both sides of the political aisle, of isolationism, and saying we don't want to be the world's police force, we don't want to try to solve everyone else's problems, we should take care of our own. That attitude is very, very, very dangerous. And when we have a deliberately partially staffed State Department, what did General Mattis say? If you don't put the resources there, you're going to have to put them in the Pentagon. And diplomacy is always the better option. We are retracting from our state of influence, and when you look at the countries seeking asylum, when you talk about legal immigration, I talked to a woman who came from Germany, and she said it took me years to come here legally, and I did it right, and these people shouldn't be able to jump in front. But you tell me, if you were in Honduras right now, and you had a 7-year-old son, and your biggest fear was that he was going to either be killed or inducted into a gang, right? Would you break a law in order to give him a chance to live? Outside of that, I'm a single father of a 15-year-old. I would in a heartbeat. We all won the lottery by being born here, right? But it doesn't decrease the responsibility that we have that comes with that great blessing. And one of them is helping the other places in the world become better so that they're not beating down our border trying to escape the places that they're in. But if we retract as America's police, or the world's police force, as people like to say it, if we retract from that role, that vacuum will be filled. And we're seeing that already. It's not going to be filled by better actors than us. So that's something to think of very seriously when we talk about foreign policy.
All right, well, now I'm not going to give my opinion. Here are the cold, hard facts nobody wants to talk about. The people who are on the Rent-A-Child program, for those of you who have been living under a rock and just, what's that? It's where people coming into this country rent children to come across the border in the hopes of trying to seek greener pastures. How is that right? Obama tried the catch and release. You can only hold a child for 20 days and then you have to release them. But you can't lock up the family together? Okay, why? Because then you look like a bad person. And if you separate the child for people who come in here and commit crimes, well, then you're equally a bad person. So you tell me how to win, because it sounds like, based upon your question, if they're a child, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Doesn't matter what it is. So either we're all going to be on the same page, you come in legally, that's how it's done. If you rent a child, what, should they get the pass? Should families be like, it's all right.
What's the percentage of rent a child? I think it's very low.
Oh, thank you, Patty. Guys, we're not going to argue.
Thank you.
Good. I understand. Just good conversation. Good. It's very, very good, though. 15 seconds.
Last week, the Supreme Court of the United States upheld the Trump administration's policy pending further decision overruling the Ninth Circuit Court, saying that, hey, the policy that says that we will not grant you asylum unless you have first sought asylum and through the many countries which you have come through and on your way to getting to the southern border. That sounds pretty dang reasonable to me.
Just important correction is what the Supreme Court did was it stayed the order. The constitutionality of it is still yet to be determined.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Bauer. I'm a board member of Manatee Tiger by the Bay. If you so choose, now that you've heard each of yourselves speak, if you have 30 seconds or less that you would like to talk about somebody else's point that resonates with you the most, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, good, bad, or indifferent. Does that make sense?
They're already on a time limit, but yes, who wants to go first?
Trying to help you out, Octavia.
I told them 15 seconds, but they
My bad.
I'll go really quickly because I really appreciated Johnny Chris' comment about the goodness of people's hearts and our ability to reach agreement. If you thought I was yelling, I apologize. It's a big room. I project. It worked in several political campaigns. I didn't know it was offending anybody if you were upset. But listen, I think we can. I think we can find common ground, and we can still be passionate. It's okay. We just have to have that faith. So I really appreciated that point of civility, and thank you very much.
Anybody else? Someone else's statement. Are we good? You want to comment on someone? Okay, next. Yes.
Hi, I'm Victoria Kasdan, a brand new member of Manatee Tiger Bay Club member. Thank you for having
Welcome.
me. Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Carter and a question for Mr. Malley. The question for Mr. Carter with regards to the comments that he made, there is a comment in there that I'm hearing very frequently in the media, which is get in line. And I'll speak on that in just a minute. My question for Mr. Malley is with regards to the solution with regards to immigration. With regards to get in line, it is a buzzword that is getting a lot of play. And I want to ask you a question with regards to that. Get in line. Right now, our immigration laws only allow each country to bring in 7%, regardless of the country's size. So when you think of the size of India versus the size of Madagascar, each one gets 7% of the total amount that we have allocated, which makes it very disproportionate. Our current immigration laws with that number cap on it and that 7% means that for certain countries like India, we are still processing immigration requests from 1994. Where is the line?
Is that the
That's
question?
my question for Mr. Carter. My question for Mr. Malley is there are only 4 ways that the immigration laws allow you to come in through immigration. The largest one is if you get a sponsor. Sponsor is for parents, child, and grandparents. The second one is a work visa where an employer sponsors you. Those represent almost 75% of the people that can come in for immigration. The last 2 are based on luck. Good luck, you go into a lottery. Bad luck, you're coming in through asylum. So what is the change that we need to make for the immigration laws? Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. The answer probably is not coming from me, other than to think, if we use a little sense on how many have, okay, as I think you said, jumped the line, that also adds to the backlog. This backlog, which I can't authoritatively tell you, it's at hundreds of thousands of cases. A lot of that is illegal. That does have to crunch and put pressure on those who want to do it legally. It's not fair. And I wish I had a better answer for you. I understand the desperation of people who want to come. I wish we could be the ward of the world and take care of them. You know, I as a Christian think that if we gave of ourselves 10%, we could take care of it. The government is not so good at doing that, but we can't. And it breaks my heart that that's what it is. But as to the weight, wow, what a good question. I'm sorry I don't have a great answer, but it's definitely being pressured by the fact that people come and they get to walk across or come across too easily. Thank you.
I think that there's an opportunity. As I said, I think the whole system is broken, and I think we need comprehensive immigration reform, even beyond the package that was passed by the Senate. I would say that we need to look at a lot of different ways in which we can bring people here for service. I think military service is a way that would be very popular among American citizens, that if we allowed people to come and serve in our military and had a quicker path to citizenship that way, and other forms of service, such as the Peace Corps and other programs that people might benefit. Another benefit to the military is you're taking someone in often from one of these countries and giving them a skill that they can then contribute to our economy. So I think that would be, like I said, extremely popular. The other part that we have to look at is the abuse that's in those methods. So you have abuse with the H-1B visas that's rampant. You have abuse with the sponsorship, which is rampant. There are ways, when you look at fields like engineering, in which you can bring somebody over from India for $40,000 to do something that someone with $150,000 education would love to do here. There's an incentive to do that. That's not really what that was meant for. So when you look at, are we bringing people over to work in fields that are understaffed? If you look at places like the shrimping industry, which has been decimated by the lack of people coming from Mexico with this skill and the ability to do it, and a lack of demand from American citizens wanting to work in it. And then you compare that to a $400 a night resort who's paying minimum wage to somebody on a visa sponsorship who's changing the linens, then yeah, I think that we could probably afford to employ Americans and find Americans to do that for a living wage. So all of these abuses are happening because, as you note, the pipeline is bottlenecked. And then I'll go back to the other part and say we won't have as much demand for either legal immigration or for, especially for asylum, if we reinsert ourselves in the role of diplomacy with a lot of these troubled countries. So I think it's why we're all up here is it's a complicated problem with a lot of moving parts, but until we get real comprehensive reform, we're only putting, fingers in holes in the dike.
Hi, my name is Jane Filesticker, and I am a member. And clearly this is an extremely complicated issue, so I just wanted to ask a question to Colonel Wright pertaining to one aspect of your presentation. You proposed a merit-based immigration system, and my question is, how does one evaluate the value of a human being and their potential? And on top of that, I'd like to ask each one of you, how many of you would be American citizens today if your grandparents had to meet a merit-based criterion for becoming American?
That's a fair question, because in our history, we've never been consistent as far as what the criteria was for immigration. Right now, we have absolutely nothing criteria, but merit-based, where we're at in the world as it is right now today, that is why I think now more than maybe 30, 40 years ago, that President Trump's call for merit-based or consideration for that is probably well-founded. Is the idea that, one, we've given the folks already here, I don't think we're concerned about the numbers to meet employment needs. I think that we could do that so that we could just say, hey, as a sovereign nation, we can make a decision about saying, if you are somebody that we feel has the potential, or you can immediately start to contribute either economically or otherwise, not just because you want to, or if you are in fact escaping conditions that require assimilation, or require to be here because of conditions in your country, but not just because conditions are better here versus somewhere else. We all know conditions are better here. That's why I love being an American, and that's why I feel blessed that I had the good grace to be dropped from my mother's loins here on this soil. I was lucky, and I wish more could be that lucky, but we need, I think, to take a look at that for the benefit of our country as a sovereign nation, to have some criteria for the betterment of the country looking in the long run.
How do you pick the criteria?
Thank you. My Tiger by the Tail presentation.
Miss Victoria Casben.
Oh, congratulations, new member.
Come on up.
Come on down. Congratulations.
Welcome on being a new member, and thank you for the very well thought out and thought-provoking question.
Thank you. Give her a round of applause. Thank you all for attending our luncheon today. Thank you to all the speakers for being here. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you to our board members. If you're here, just stand and wave your hands. And my program committee, thank you so much. We invite you all to celebrate with us on our 10th anniversary for our inaugural Pat Glass Leadership Awards Dinner on Thursday, November 21st. You can see our website, manateetigerbay.org. The tickets are going really, really fast. We're really excited about this. It's going to be a great dinner. The next luncheon will be held on Thursday, October 17th. We will be having a topic of health care. Members and guests, if you know anyone that wants to attend or become a member of Tiger Bay, please bring them as a guest, and hopefully they'll become a member. We offer you an option to submit your question and answers online. If you are interested in submitting a topic and speakers, you can contact Elaine at manateetigerbay.org. We really, really want you to participate in this. So if you have a topic, please send it to us. Pier 22 provides complimentary valet parking for our luncheons. Thank you to the following news media for coverage of our luncheon: Charles Clapsaddle, METV crew. Please give them a round of applause. Their website is metvweb.com. Also, ABC7 WWSB News team for attending and covering today's program, Bradenton Herald and Sarasota Herald Tribune. Thank you all and have a great day.